When we play the piano, there's a couple reasons why our muscles get tense. The first reason is because the muscles are being held in a stiff or static position. Think about putting your arm in a position like so and then holding it there and not moving it for a period of time. Your muscles are going to get tight and tense because they're being held in a stiff position while lengthening. The second reason why muscles get tense is because they're being overused or overworked. Think about doing like 1,000,000 squats in a row without resting. Your muscles are going to get incredibly tight and tense and tired. Now, basically what this means is that when we're playing the piano, we want to look out for these two different things and make sure that they're not happening. But what happens if we're doing one of these things when playing a piece of music? We need to have a way to address this tension and get rid of it. And there's a couple different ways that people try to get rid of tension. The first way is by being constantly in motion. So the philosophy here is that when muscles are constantly moving, lengthening, and shortening, they will tend to not get tense because, of course, they're not being held in a static position. So a lot of times you'll see people and their wrists are going up and down, their elbows and their arms are just seeming to be constantly in motion. And a lot of the times, the reason why people play like this is to avoid muscles being stuck in a static position so that they don't tense up. An example of this might be using circular motion, even though you don't necessarily need to, or gently raising and lowering the wrist, which is called letting the wrist breathe when you're, say, playing a melody note or longer notes. And both of these can be a great way of keeping the muscles constantly in motion so that nothing has a chance to stiffen up. And this can be actually quite effective. The other thing that people do is they try to make sure that they build into their playing, into every passage, a kind of release. And this comes from the so-called relaxation school. An example of this could be every time you reach a long note in a passage, trying to consciously relax as much as possible, or every time you lift off the keyboard, having a relaxation gesture where you relax all the muscles in the hand and the wrist and the arm. And this too can have its place depending on what we're doing. Now, the third way that people try to address this is to only use precisely the muscles that we absolutely need to carry out a particular task at the piano. And then as soon as we're done with that task, those muscles are no longer acquired as we move to the new task. So those muscles are relaxed or released and we move on to a new group of muscles. This requires an understanding of good posture and alignment at the keyboard, but it also requires an extreme awareness of the muscles and what is happening in the muscles at all times. And this can be incredibly complicated because essentially we need to choreograph every single passage of music. Now, this sounds a lot more complicated than it has to be, but a couple examples could be if you're playing very high on the keyboard so that your elbow and your upper arm have to be extended so that your arm is aligned to the keyboard. But when you move back down the keyboard, you no longer need your upper arm and elbow to be extended, so these muscles need to release because they're no longer required to play close to the body. Still, another example could be if you play a finger and then move to another finger, the finger that just played no longer needs to be doing anything. And so the muscles that control the finger need to release so that the finger can just sit there resting on the keys completely effortlessly. Now, each one of these solutions to the problem of tension can be more or less effective depending on what the musical context is of whatever you're practicing or where you are in your journey of building your technique. And if you're not quite sure which solution to use depending on what it is you're practicing, you can check out one of the videos on the screen now, which is going to help you figure that out.